In 2016, an infestation of pea weevil meant Wairarapa arable farmers had to forgo profitable pea seed crops in an effort to eradicate the pest. Karen Williams was appointed as grower representative on the Biosecurity New Zealand governance group to help determine an effective and fair response to the problem.
So 2016, in mustard and vegetable seeds, some of the staff there noticed this weevil crawling around and did the right thing. They contacted MPI and certainly said, look, we're a bit concerned, you guys need to get over here. And from then there was a sort of a flow-on effect of identification and then pulling together a governance group, a technical advisory group, and making some hard decisions about how they were going to address the incursion. We're growing an array of crops, but of course we were growing peas, which nearly 40 hectares of that. So, when the ban was put in place, obviously that changed our system significantly. The problem with pea weevil is that it gets into inside the pea and it eats it. So either we have a lot of higher crop losses for the seed, or we need to use more herbicide. It also had an impact on our international markets. We lost our status as pea weevil free country. When it was discovered at the pea store, peas, pea seed, pea offal, pea straw had gone all around the country. So that was a real dilemma. We're trying to decide, well, if we put a regional growing ban in place in the Wairarapa, has it already escaped? Are we just kind of making it hard on Wairarapa growers and yet it's gone everywhere? So there was a lot of consideration around governance, and from the technical advisory group, a lot of conversations with growers and industry experts, entomologists from overseas, before a decision was made. But it was felt that there was still a chance it hadn't escaped, and that if we put the right restrictions in place in the Wairarapa, we could eradicate. We needed to be certain that the pea weevil hadn't escaped out of the Wairarapa to other places in New Zealand for it to be an effective ban. So MPI set up a number of different surveillance of other areas with peas, and so that happened pretty comprehensively over a 2-year period, and there was never any weevil found, so that surveillance stopped after 2 years, because essentially it was like achieving area freedom. The way to eradicate was to stop their life cycle, and if you removed the pea flower, which is enables, so they feed on it, but it enables them to be reproductive. So it was the hope within sort of a 12-month cycle it would eliminate any reproduction. So the original growing ban was for 2 years, just to give it a bit of a buffer, and ideally that they'd be removed from the environment by then. So what MPI, along with growers, did is grew a number of trap crops around the region, strategically placed, and trap crop is really just a mini pea plot that was actively actively monitored and surveillance on that, just to see if there was any pea weevil. The first year we got 1,700 weevils found around the Wairarapa. The next year, only on 2 sites we got 15, and by the 3rd year there was 0 weevil. But for us to achieve area freedom again, sort of an international status of no weevil, we needed 2 consecutive years of no weevil, and that's why the ban was extended to enable us to do that. The 3 key things that we attempted to do was, firstly, some sort of form of compensation, and that was complicated because the Biosecurity Act only provides for compensation if you're destroying something, not if you're not growing it. So there's a few legal complexities there, but we worked through it with MPI, and we got to a point where we had an ex gratia payment, and so we've been working through that with them over the last 4 years, and that was very much about just ensuring that people weren't worse off nor better off, but it just paid out the difference between what your alternative crop option was and what peas would have derived with income, because they were higher. The second key point was about applying to Ministry for Primary Industries again to some funding for an alternative cropping strategy, and we were fortunate to get approval for that. And so, led by the Foundation for Arable Research, we've had a number of crop trials around the region for the last 4 years. The third key ingredient, if you like, to support growers through the ban was that whilst we couldn't grow the pea seed here, that Canterbury-based seed companies, which is where most of them are, would bring some alternative crops here whilst our peas were being grown down there. What's critical now is that once the ban gets lifted, we really want those contracts back. We're ready to go. We've got eager growers, keen to start growing peas and other alternatives.
The farm we're on here today is 224 hectares of alluvial silt loams. We also we've got another 24 hectares that we lease closer to Carterton, which is just a livestock operation. And we lease a couple of livestock blocks just up the road, just livestock as well. So we grow, we're predominantly a spring-sown arable cropping farm. So we're sowing wheat and barley. And then we also have red clover for seed production and Italian ryegrass for seed production. We also finish roughly 5,000 lambs a year and up to 200 head of cattle. When we were allowed to grow peas, we were growing roughly the 3-year average prior to pea weevil was 36 hectares. And because part of the pea weevil ex gratia claim process, we knew it was the 3-year average of your area and your yield and gross margin to work out our ex gratia payment. So yeah, we've been going 36 hectares of peas. Obviously that was stopped. So we have mainly increased our wheat production and ryegrass seed is the other one we've increased. And so I guess the effect that's had is we've possibly slightly down on our livestock production because where the peas were so good was they were in late, harvested early, back into an autumn forage crop and with livestock grazing on them the end of March. Whereas if we've got a cereal in place, it's planted a bit earlier, so maybe end of September, early October versus end of October, November, and not harvested till the end of February. And then so because it's taken more out of the ground, moisture and nutrients, then that forage that's planted in the autumn, we're probably a month later grazing that. So there is an effect there, which is very hard to quantify, and we haven't tried to for our ex gratia payments, but it is noticeable. The pea growing ban, it's been difficult financially and we've had to change our system a bit, but it's made us more resilient, I think. So it's, one of life's curveballs, isn't it? But you deal with it.
In February 2020, the ban on pea plants and straw across Wairarapa was lifted after the region was declared pea weevil free for 2 seasons. This successful eradication is understood to be a world first. Thanks, New Zealand On Air.